Good afternoon. For those of you who have not yet met, my name is Melissa Giller. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Before we begin, I'd just like to ask that you not videotape or record this event, as there are stories that will be told by our speakers that they've been asked not to be shared more widespread than you hear today. For those of you who might like to watch this as a playback later or share it with family and friends, we will be uploading a version of this program to our YouTube channel in the coming days. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. I would now like to introduce the color guard from Naval Base Ventura County who will parade the colors. I ask that you please stand for the colors and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. Parade the colors. It is now my honor to invite members of Scout BSA Troop 1633 and 633 and members of Cub Scout Pack Troop 3633 to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be followed by the playing of our national anthem by the Air National Guard Band of the West Coast.
All active and retired military, hand salute. All others, place your right hand over your heart. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glow, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Who say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? For the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Retire the colors.
Shoulders up. Ready. Locked on. March. Forward. March.
You may be seated, thank you. Before we continue, I'd like to recognize some distinguished guests here with us this evening. Please hold your applause until everyone's been introduced, and if you would stand when I call your name. Of course, we'll start with our former Congressman Elton Gallegly and his lovely wife, Janice. From the city of Simi Valley, we have Ruth Luevanos and Elaine Litster with us here today. From Ventura County, Sheriff Bill Ayub and Under Sheriff Monica McGrath are here with us today. From Naval Base Ventura County, we have Captain Robert Kimnock and Captain Philip Malone. We have Miss Caitlin Jenner with us tonight. And last but certainly not least, our incredible partner for this evening, Debbie Gregory. Debbie is the co-founder and CEO of VAMBOA, Veterans and Military Business Owners Association, and she has been instrumental in the planning and orchestration of today's event. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank Mr. Skyrider for the great 9/11 in the sky, as well as to Simi Valley Fire Department Station 44 for bringing out their truck, which you saw in the courtyard. We salute all of you and all the first responders in our community and our nation for what you do for us every day. So thank you all for being here. It is an honor to be here today to commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Sadly, the events in Afghanistan over the past few weeks have made today's event even more poignant, and we'd be remiss to not add the lives lost in Kabul, as well as the men and women of our armed forces who have lost their lives fighting against terrorism since 2001, to our thoughts and our prayers as we gather here tonight to honor the almost 3,000 souls who lost their lives 20 years ago today. I think it's fitting that we're sitting here on the library's south lawn, which sits adjacent to our permanent Gold Star Memorial, which is over there to your left, which honors the families of the servicemen and women who sacrificed their lives while serving in the U.S. military. This memorial serves as a reminder that we will honor their commitment to duty and country, that we will thank them for their service and for our freedom, and that we make sure that they are never, ever forgotten. To find the right words to properly frame the meaning of today's ceremony, I rely on those from our 40th president, delivered in 1983 after a terrorist tragedy in Beirut at the United States Embassy. President Reagan said, and I quote, "The terrorists who planned and carried out this cynical and cowardly attack have failed in their purpose. They mistakenly believe that if they're cruel enough and they're violent enough, they will weaken American resolve and deter us from our effort to help building lasting and secure peace. Well, if they think that, they don't know too much about America. As a free people, we're never allowed intimidation to stop us from doing what we know to be right. The best way for us to show our love and respect for our fellow countrymen who died is to carry on with their task, to press harder than ever with our peacemaking efforts, and that's exactly what we're doing." President Reagan continued, "America is both strong and just, both decent and dedicated. Even in the shadow of this terrible terrorist tragedy, it is something to remember and draw heart from. It is also something to be true to." Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for an invocation by Chaplain Lieutenant Commander Yoon Choi from Naval Base Ventura County.
Won't you please join me in a word of prayer? Let us pray. Almighty, gracious, kind, loving God, we thank you for this opportunity and pray where people of all color, race, ethnicity, and faith can come and freely pray without the fear of persecution or the pressure to conform to a particular religion. We know many places in the world this is not possible. As our four founding fathers declared, you, O God, has granted all human beings unendable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This right has been challenged. 20 years ago, our nation watched in horror as plane crashed, people jumping off from burning buildings to few more lives of seconds, the collapsing of the towers, the tsunami of the toxic dust blanketing lower Manhattan, and people running for cover will be forever engraved in our minds. Lord, in the midst of the worst of evil, you have brought our nation together in mind, heart, and spirit at ground zero. where acts of kindness, self-sacrifice, giving, serving, caring, loving, and heroism was ubiquitous. So many answered the call of duty, taking the oath to support and defend our Constitution, as the rest of the world followed to ensure this kind of evil will never happen again. Lord, remembering that dreadful day, tonight we unite at the forefront of freedom, joining our solemn, heavy hearts, memorializing those who lost their lives and honoring those families who are still grieving. So we are so grateful to all those who have served in the rescues, served in the wars, to all those who made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can come freely and assemble to express our gratitude and to pray that may God continue to bless the United States of America and the principles that make this nation so great. Amen.
I now ask that we bow our heads in silence in honor of the men and women who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001, and for the men and women who lost their lives fighting for freedom since 9/11. may be seated. Thank you. Our first speaker tonight is not a stranger to speaking at the Reagan Library for this event, for he joined us in 2006 for our 9/11 Freedom Walk program. He is a retired New York Police Department officer who had patrolled for 17 years in New York City. He witnessed the horrible events that day and lost many friends and fellow officers. The dust and debris from the Trade Center collapse damaged his lungs so much that he could barely breathe, and he nearly died. But instead, he went on to provide security at Ground Zero and to help prevent terrorist attacks in the subway after 9/11. He has received the Medal of Distinguished Duty and was chosen by CBS as top cop of Transit PD. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of New York's most decorated transit officers, Mr. Marc Manfro.
I'd like to thank Dana Baker and Melissa Giller of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute for her gracious invitation, and anyone attending this 9/11 tribute. I'm very happy to meet you and see all of you here today. People often wonder why anyone becomes a police officer, depicted at times in a negative light, despite all the good that they do. Long before 9/11, I requested and was given permission to wear the shield of NYPD cop Robert Bilodeau, who had been killed in the line of duty. For 17 years, I saved both civilians and cops' lives on a regular basis, along with capturing hundreds and hundreds of felons. Emergency responders have similar motivators to make a difference. For some, it's in their DNA. My father was a court officer captain. My son, who's sitting in the front row, is an LAPD cop. And my uncle, a combat medic, killed in the past war. Here on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in the history of the world, nearly 3,000 innocent lives were lost, gone too long before their time. I'm here to extend my condolences to the citizens lost and the members, of course, of the military. To my brothers and sisters in blue in both the finest and the Port Authority PD, along with other law enforcement agencies, and the devastating losses of our famed firemen, the bravest, and emergency responders who faced the chaos of that day and the trauma of approximately 25,000 who nearly died. It was a surreal experience being rotated to Ground Zero for 6 months, where endless blocks of buildings had disappeared along with the people who had been in them. These citizens' hopes and dreams were stolen, and their friends' and families' lives forever changed. It was while I was guarding Ground Zero that they recovered my friend, NYPD police officer John Perry. After both of our retirements, we had plans. We were going to start a casting company enabling cops to play extras in movies and TV. He was scheduled to retire on 9/11 and planned to practice law meanwhile. It was while at police headquarters, which was approximately half a mile away from the Twin Towers, he decided to push off his retirement and respond to the emergency unfolding at the World Trade Center. He was in the lobby of the South Building, preventing citizens from entering the courtyard where they could get killed from the falling debris. When the building shook just before falling, he helped a woman who had fainted and brought her to safety at his own peril. He accomplished his objective to save her life, while sadly losing his own. Something over 400 emergency responders would do that day for the approximate 25,000 survivors. Each day I worked at Ground Zero, I got sicker. A chronic cough, sinus issues, lung damage, shortness of breath. But I was tough. I was trying to stick it out. After a year, it affected my heart and put me in a critical condition. And then, of course, I got the bad news. They said they didn't think I was going to survive. But I wasn't alone. A couple hundred cops have died from the toxins at Ground Zero, more than from the actual 911 attack, some of whom I personally knew. Detective Tommy Weiner helped me out with my first arrest. Officer Pete Meone, my first steady partner, and Officer Richie Holland, who I used to catch felons with. And tragically, if that weren't enough, a couple hundred more firemen have died, along with many, many more citizens. After surviving being in critical condition, there would be another dozen close calls, the last event this past weekend, but I was going to make it here today no matter what. While it's my objective to speak at future 9/11 anniversaries, God willing, I'm leaving it up to all of you to stay vigilant and elect strong leaders. God bless America, and please never forget 9/11.
Thank you, Mark. We're so glad you were here with us today. Thank you for sharing your story. It's now my honor to introduce a man who has served his country with extraordinary distinction, culminating his United States Army military service in the Combat Brigade Command during surge operations in Iraq as the Special Assistant to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with principal focus on warrior and family support. He is recognized for his courage on and off the battlefield and is an untiring advocate for our service members, military veterans, their families, and the families of our fallen. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to introduce Colonel David Sutherland.
Let me do a roll call real quick. If you are a still serving or former first responder, please stand up. If you're a active duty service member, please stand up. If you're a veteran, please stand up. God bless you. And if you're a Blue Star family member, please stand up. And just to be clear, if you're a Gold Star family member, please stand up. I want to thank Debbie Gregory for inviting me, for Melissa, the team from Reagan Library. My father, who passed away in March, would have thought this was really cool, because he thinks I won Desert Storm all by myself. And so me speaking at the Reagan Library would have been very cool for him. My mom, who's 89 years old and in Toledo, Ohio, is watching on the live stream. At least she said she was going to make it work on her phone. So I think I get big points for mentioning my mom while I'm speaking at the Reagan Library. I want to thank the band. Well done. I want to thank the color guard. Nice job, shipmates. Chaplain, well done. And Mark, thank you for your words and your service. I believe everything ends as it begins. So I'll begin by saying I held him in my arms. I thanked him for his service. I swore to him I would take care of Latrice and their 4 kids for the rest of their lives. We have never had a shortage of naysayers and pessimists, those that will gladly stand in the back of the crowd, point to the half-empty glass, and exclaim why great things can't happen. I've seen the effects of esprit de corps and morale when leadership fails and managers take over, when followers hunker down and wait for better days. A fortress mentality kicks in. What we saw on 9/11 by our first responders was they rejected a paradigm of negativity. What we've seen over the past 2 decades from our service members is a rejection of a paradigm of negativity. Instead of hunkering down and waiting for better days, we step out, we unshackle innovation, and we make things happen, positive things happen. That understanding is why our service members, the American people, and our first responders are inextricably linked by the events of 9/11. And not just because we remember where we were, but rather because it bonded us together. It connected us in a meaningful way where we reject that paradigm of negativity. When my dad, a few months after 9/11, called me and I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, he said, "What's the military going to say to the American people?" My response was the same thing our first responders say. From the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people are my people. Your Lord is my Lord. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. And will the Lord treat me so severely if even in death we are separated?" That loyalty, that connection bonds us together. That rejection of a paradigm of negativity. My elevator story is I'm an advocate and a mentor for 2.3 million men and women in uniform, for their families and for our families of the fallen. I'm Bonnie's husband, and I'm the father of 2 amazing young men. My oldest was 7 years old on 9/11. He's now teaching at Blinn College in Bryant, Texas. My youngest was 5 years old on 9/11. He's now a second lieutenant stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, going through armor officer training. They've never known a time when I was not preparing for war, at war, or coming home from war. And even when I came home, I was still at war. That understanding, that recognition that you can't talk about us, you can't talk about our first responders without talking about our families. War is vile. It's one of the most vile things you can imagine, and yet there are some things more vile, and that's why we fight. 2 towers being knocked down, that's why we fight. Terrorists thinking they will impose their will on us, that's why we fight. Holding a 5-year-old girl in my arms 5 days after I got to Iraq who'd been shot in the face because her father was enforcing a rule of law and not Sharia law. That's why we fight. Going into a torture house, and in one corner of the rooms are heads, another corner torsos, another corner legs, and another corner arms of 70 different men, women, and children who refuse to succumb to a perverse interpretation of a beautiful document. That's why we fight. Abu Nidal was killed in my province in Iraq in 2001 when he was trying to establish Hezbollah in Iraq. That's why we fight. And Zarqawi was killed 4 miles from my operating base when he declared Diyala, my province, the capital of the caliphate. That's why we fight. And when afforded the opportunity, we will win because we build while our enemies destroy. What binds us together, both our first responders and our military, is our warrior ethos, built from the blood, sweat, and tears of our service members on the hedgerows of Europe, from the islands of the Pacific, from the frozen Chosin of Korea, from the rice paddies of Vietnam, to the mountains of Central Asia and the deserts of Southwest Asia. What bonds us together is our warrior ethos, that I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. That connection is what bonds us to those at local communities that say the same thing. For your safety and your security, I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. And that loyalty from the book of Ruth means I may die for you. I don't want to, but I'm willing to. Because of that warrior ethos, we're successful on the battlefield today because of what we learned from our Vietnam veterans. And we're successful when we come home because we can talk about our challenges because they couldn't. That connection, I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. Jeffrey was a sergeant in my brigade combat team, the sergeant in charge of 9 men. And he was given the mission to put in an ambush overwatching a known IED site where Al-Qaeda thought we owned the roads and they owned everything else. And they were placing IEDs in this area. And Jeffrey put in his ambush position, put in his crew-served weapons, then moved to the right flank of his squad, where he took up a position to observe the engagement area. As the enemy carrying their IED-making materials moved into the engagement area, Jeffrey gave the command to fire, and as he did, he and his battle buddy were struck by 2 high-explosive rounds, launching them into the canal to their front. After the engagement, Jeffrey's platoon got to him. They pulled him out of the canal where he'd been submerged, provided buddy aid and comfort, assisted him, and then evacuated him to the Balad Combat Support Hospital so he could get treatment for his wounds. 6 hours after Jeffrey got to the Balad cache, my command sergeant major and I flew in to check on his condition. As we landed at the cache pad, Command Sergeant Major Felt and I, we were met by 2 aggressive nurses that wanted to tell us that Jeffrey had just come out of 6 hours of surgery. He was in the recovery room, he was conscious, but he wasn't able to communicate. As we walked down to the recovery room, we made the turn into the room where all the service members who had been wounded that day were laid down, and there at the far end was Jeffrey. He was conscious, he was awake, he was alert, but he was intubated with a tube down his throat from his surgery. And as we walked towards him, we recognized he'd been split open from his neck to his groin. As we got closer, Jeffrey recognized us, and with tears in his eyes, he asked for a pen and a piece of paper using his hands. And as we handed it to him, he wrote down one thing: "Can I stay in the Army?" Split open from his neck to his groin, all he wanted to do was continue to serve. All he wanted to do was get back to those individuals that recognized his values and his behaviors, that wouldn't define him based on a single incident on the battlefield, but rather his capacity for greatness. Jeffrey will thrive because he will always place the mission first, and he will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. Trooper was 17 years old when he came to my brigade combat team. Just out of high school, doughy and pockmarked, still 17. As we were preparing to deploy to Iraq, Trooper couldn't go with us because he was too young at the time, and we put him on the baggage detail where he was loading bags into the belly of the aircraft as we were loading to get ready to deploy to Iraq. Trooper's leader saw he was angry and ticked off because he couldn't go with us. His leader walked over to him and said, "Don't worry, when you turn 18, we'll bring you in. We'll integrate you in. We'll take care of you. I got your back." A few months later, Trooper turned 18. He deployed over as we were getting ready to do an operation in the Djibouti Peninsula, an area where we hadn't been in since the initial invasion, an area where Al-Qaeda thought we owned the roads and they owned everything else, and we were going to prove them wrong. Trooper was in his leader's command post as his leader was doing his planning operations, leaning up against the wall, shuffling his feet back and forth, nervous and apprehensive about his first combat operation. Leader walked up to him, stood next to him, and said, "Don't worry, I got your back. I'll get you through this. I've been on multiple air assaults. I'll get you through this." We conducted the air assault in the Djibouti Peninsula. Leader and trooper moved towards the enemy positions, moved towards the sound of the guns. And as they did, they came under direct fire from its enemy position. As trooper was maneuvering towards taking out the enemy position, he was struck in the shoulder by an AK-47 round. With one good arm at 18 years old, he continued to engage the enemy with M4 rifle and grenades. As leader saw that trooper had been wounded, he ran to his side and he was struck in the leg by an AK-47 round. Trooper, seeing that his leader had been wounded, low-crawled to his position, continuing to engage the enemy, returning fire and providing buddy aid at 18 years old to his leader. At one point, literally trying to stick his hand into the leader's leg and grasp the femoral artery that had been severed. He continued to engage the enemy with grenades, and with his final grenade took out the enemy position. Then with one good arm, at 18 years old, picked up leader and put him over his shoulder, carried him 300 meters to the medevac site, and as he laid leader down for the medics to work on him, the medics declared leader killed in action. Trooper refused to be evacuated from the battlefield that day until leader was evacuated. And as they loaded leader onto the belly of the aircraft to make his final trip to his parents, trooper made the comment, "Sir, I got your back. I'll get through this." It's understanding not just what we are, but who we are. The capacity for greatness that exists in those that come back to our communities, because they will always place the mission first. They will never accept defeat. They will never quit, and they will never leave a fallen comrade, and that's you. We trust you to remember the events of 9/11, to remember those that have been touched by military service and our first responders that secure our community. We trust you to never leave a fallen comrade. My call to action today is reject the paradigm of negativity. Recognize what we achieve and our capacity of greatness. Step out, unshackle innovation for those service members who are coming home, our veterans, our military families, our first responders, and engage with them in meaningful ways. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Colonel David Sutherland. I'm a veteran of 29 years active federal service. I'm a veteran of 2 wars. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm an uncle, I'm an American soldier. I served for you, I fought with you, and I would die for you. God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Colonel. I think I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thank you for your service. It was incredible. On behalf of the Reagan Library, Veterans and Military Business Owners Association, and America salute you. We thank you and all of our special guests for being with us tonight, especially the Naval Base of Ventura County, the Simi Valley Fire Department, and the Air National Guard Band of the West Coast for being a part of today's program. You have made tonight truly remarkable and memorable. I know that Colonel Sutherland did this just a few moments ago, but I'd like to do it again. I'm switching away from 9/11 for just a second. I know the past 18 months have been very hard on our nation and on our community. If there's anyone who's in the audience who works for the police or fire departments, can you please stand again? And how about if we have in our audience any doctors or nurses or other first responders? Anyone here with us today? Thank you to all of you for keeping our community safe each and every day. Now it's time for the traditional musical portion of our event, my favorite part of the evening. First, we will hear God Bless America by the Air National Guard Band of the West Coast. Following that song, we will be recognizing all of you who are here today representing the different branches of our military. The Air National Guard Band of the West Coast will be playing a service medley. When you hear your branch's song, we ask that you please stand so we can salute you. In addition, if you are a family member here representing a current soldier or a fallen member of the military, please stand in their place when their branch's song is played so we can remember everyone who has participated or sacrificed in our fight for freedom. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless America. For all of you who stood up, thank you all for your service to this great nation. It's truly an honor to have you all with us. It's the first time my dad's been at an event where he's been able to stand, so yay, my dad. Before we conclude, I'd like to remind everyone that the Reagan Library is currently hosting a special exhibition that features the FBI. In addition to looking at many of the top cases in the FBI's history, we have an entire gallery dedicated to 9/11. We encourage you to come back and visit if you haven't seen it already. In addition, a quick reminder that the Reagan Library has partnered with For the Troops, and we will continue to collect donations through September 30th in the library's main lobby. We will now conclude tonight's program with words from President Reagan that still ring true today. Here, let us make a vow to the dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Let our actions say, I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their valor, and borne by their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died. Thank you all for being with us tonight.